So we're finally gonna have some UFC after a few weeks off in 2023, and I'm just gonna say something. I feel awesome. I'm sick. I went to a festival over New Year's. I've come home, and I've gotten sick with exactly what you're probably thinking of right now. So what it means is I'm gonna have a week off work, which means that I'm probably gonna be able to pump out a lot of content, but it's probably gonna be pretty low quality because I'm so tired. But I'm going to be putting out the content, guys. I'm probably going to be putting out like 2 videos a day, I reckon. I've got a lot of video ideas that I've never really got around to making because I've been so busy at work and this and that. So, yeah, I guess I've got the time to finally do it. No more excuses. Let's just talk about this fight night. There's 12 fights on the card. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. There's a lot of really good fights as well for an Apex fight night, especially for the return fight for 2023. Another thing that is going to be notable about this year that I'm looking forward to is in November, the UFC turns 30 years old. You can kind of see in this little corner of the poster, there's a 30 there because the UFC is turning 30 in 2022. In November, the UFC turns 30. We're probably going to have an insane card for that. But let's just go through their card here. Mateusz Rebecki versus Nick Fiore. As usual, UFC finds the most random prospects that I've never heard of whatsoever and sign them for short notice fights. And Nick Fiore's that guy. But the problem with Nick Fiore is the guys that he's fighting just not that great. You know what I mean? Like he's fighting guys with losing records, 5-19, 3-9. He fought Jay Ellis twice. Like it's just a little bit sketchy, isn't it? You know, like he's looking great. He's getting first round finishes, but he's not for anyone anywhere near the level of Mateusz Rebecki, who's a guy that I'm really hyped up about. I was very surprised that this guy had to fight on Dana White's Contender Series. But he did anyway. He won the fight, and he did get hit with a good head kick. This guy's fought some really good levels of competition over in FEN. I think he's going to beat Nick Fiore. I think he's going to finish Nick Fiore inside probably the first or the second round. I mean, he's taking the fight on very short notice. I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if Nick Fiore can pull something off, but this guy really has not fought anyone UFC level. We move on to Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Sijara Eubanks. I am going to be picking Priscilla Cachoeira in this one here. Her striking defense is some of the worst in the UFC, and I don't know if Sijara Eubanks is going to be the one to exploit that. You know, the two girls, well, the girl that could have exploited it recently was Ji-yeon Kim, and arguably she should have won that fight, but that was a banger of a fight anyway. But Sijara Eubanks, you know, she's really big for the division. She's almost 38 years old, 5'4". She does miss weight a lot. Missing weight is a very big problem for her. She beat Elise Reed, but everyone kind of picked her to beat Elise Reed. That's kind of expected. I think Priscilla Cachoeira on the feet's got a little bit of an advantage here. She's going to throw volume with absolutely no striking defense whatsoever. Eubanks will probably try and take her down, but I think that Cachoeira is going to run away with this one here. This next fight is super interesting because a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people are thinking this is a bad fight to make. You know, like you got two undefeated guys up and coming, but I don't mind it because I feel like the winner of this fight, the UFC can invest in a little bit heavier. They can kind of build them up, and the other guys are going to be a great prospect, but not necessarily the undefeated prospect that UFC's trying to build with this fight. So I do like Javid Basharat. Originally, for some reason, I thought it was Matthias Mendonca taking on Farid Basharat, and in that matchup, I was actually going to pick Mendonca, but I'm going with Javid. He's looked really good. He's fought better levels of competition. He's fought pretty good guys in the UFC. Like he beat Tony Gravely with his grappling. He beat Trevin Jones. He beat Oron Carlon, who probably has the most padded record in history. And yeah, like the thing about Javid is he hasn't fought that great guys until he got into the UFC, and he's really proven me wrong because I was very concerned about that level of competition that he'd fought. But Mateus Mendonca, he's fought some pretty good guys up and down levels of competition. He's getting a lot of finishes. He's got really good grappling. He fought Ashik Ajim, who had bad striking defense. He threw everything in his punches, and he ended up knocking him out a couple of months ago, which was awesome. Got signed, 10-0 prospect. Two guys to look out for in this division for sure. I'm going with Basharat by decision. I think he's going to use his wrestling and his grappling to ground out Mendonca to a decision win. This next one here is interesting because I don't mind an Abdul Razak Al Hassan pick because Claudio Ribeiro, as I said, I've talked about a lot of bad striking defense in this video, but Claudio Ribeiro also has no striking defense. This guy's striking is really sloppy, but it's very powerful. I mean, we saw that against Ivan Valenzuela. Both guys were swinging for the fences. He won that. Almost every fight that he's in as well, he gets taken down in, but he gets up with ease. And his striking is very sloppy. It's not a lot of straight punches. It's all hooks. It's all uppercuts. It's 110% power. Like, he's trying to knock his opponent out. He also weighed in at 181 pounds for the Dana White's Contender Series fight, which I think was a little bit weird. Maybe it was like a kg to 2 pounds weight miss. I don't know, like a bad conversion. He's fighting Abdulrazak Al Hassan, who does have judo background. I mean, he's literally called Judo Thunder, but he just doesn't use it. He's a striker for the most part, is how I would describe his fighting style. I do think Claudio Ribeiro is going to get the knockout, but I'm not confident whatsoever, and this pick could change closer to the fight, because it is a couple of weeks away. But I like Ribeiro, man. I don't really have like the highest ceiling for him with the striking style. As I said, he's really sloppy, but he's really powerful. But I think he probably is going to land on someone like Al Hassan. So I think it's a great fight for his debut. Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Raoni Barcelos. A step up in competition for Umar Nurmagomedov. I think after this, it's time to start giving Umar ranked opponents, you know what I mean? But I do like Umar Nurmagomedov in this matchup. He's looked pretty untouchable recently. He beat Nate Maness, dominated him. He submitted Brian Callagher in the first round, beat Sergey Morozov, and before that he was on the regional promotions. But Nurmagomedov's dominated everyone he's really come up against in UFC. This is a big step up in competition, though, I will say. Raoni Barcelos recently did just beat Trevin Jones and looks pretty good. But before that, he was on a 2-fight losing streak. But before that, he was the number 16 ranked guy for a very long time, man. I think that Raoni Barcelos is that guy who you've got to beat for us to kind of see if you're going to be ranked, you know what I mean? Like, I guess the Trevor Jones matchup doesn't really make a lot of sense in that. Victor Henry was a short notice opponent, but you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to beat Barcelos, you're ready for the rankings, and I think Umar Nurmagomedov is. I don't know if he finishes Barcelos. I think he's going to win by decision, using his striking and his grappling, because he's a really good striker, as well as a really good wrestler and grappler. Now we move on to Dan Argueta versus Isaac Dalgarian. I'm seeing quite a bit of hype on Isaac Dalgarian, but I'm not on the hype train yet. If he beats Dan Argueta, I will be on the hype train, but for now I am going to still side with Dan Argueta. It's kind of a situation where I've looked at Dan Argueta since he dropped out of the Ultimate Fighter. I think he lost. But then since then he fought some really good guys. Like he fought a 6-3 opponent to get back. And then he fought 12-0 Myron Santos, 14-6 Diego Silva in a very close 5-round fight. And then he had a pretty competitive fight with Damon Jackson, upper weight class as well. And he's going to be fighting Isaac Dalgarian. I'm just waiting for my laptop to load, because it's lots of things not going right with it. But one thing that is interesting, actually, that I just noticed is this fight's at 145 pounds. And Dan Argueta, for the most part, has been fighting his whole career at 135. So I'm interested to see how that works out for him. Dalgarian has a really good wrestling background, but he hasn't really fought the best competition in the world, and I do like Dan Argueta's wrestling and grappling in this matchup as well. So obviously someone I'm going to have to look into a little bit more is Dalgarian, but I do think maybe it's a situation where he was signed a little bit too early. Maybe they should have given him another win. Maybe they should have, I don't know, put him on Dana White's Contender Series. And also another thing is, he's fought in FAC for like his whole career, and FAC was actually owned by James Krause, to my knowledge, or they used James Krause to market that promotion. And he's affiliated with Glory MMA and Fitness. So I'm assuming he's not got James Krause coaching him anymore, because James Krause is pretty much going to be banned from the sport once we get a little bit more information released to the public. So it'll be interesting to see. Like Dalgarian, I highly doubt he's training at Glory MMA and Fitness. I think that gym has been shut down. So I'm going with Argueta. I think he should be able to use his wrestling and grappling in this matchup. I just trust him a little bit more, but it is interesting that he is fighting at 145 when he is a more natural bantamweight. But we'll move on. Ketlin Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington. It's not gonna be a fun fight. It's just not. It's gonna be. I mean, let's just say make your sandwich when this fight is on. Like Ketlin Vieira, she's not really in exciting fights. A lot of people will probably disagree with me on that, but I don't really see the hype behind her personally. And then Raquel Pennington's whole game plan is to clinch you up against the cage and win on control time against the cage. That's literally all she's done her whole career. It somehow works and is really successful. She's on a 4-fight win streak right now, and this is probably a title eliminator at 135, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I think Ketlin Vieira wins. I think she's a much better striker. I think she's going to be strong enough to keep Raquel Pennington off of her, and I think that Ketlin Vieira is going to beat Raquel Pennington by decision, using her striking, or much better striking. Pennington's going to be trying to close the distance, but I do think that Vieira is going to be strong enough to keep her off. And now this next one here, Alan Nascimento versus Carlos Hernandez. A little bit of a controversial take I'm going to have right now, but in my opinion, Carlos Hernandez, and actually there's a lot of people that agree with me, I think this guy's on a 2-fight losing streak, man. He didn't beat Daniel Barrios on Dana White's Contender Series, and he didn't beat Victor Altamirano in the UFC. Like, this guy's lost his last 2 fights, and now he's fighting a step up in competition against Alan Nascimento, who, to be fair, in hindsight, really did have the style to beat Jake Hatley. That was just a pretty bad matchup, maybe, for the UFC, who were trying to build Jake Hatley off as Nascimento, because Nascimento coming on short notice, against Tagir Ulanbekov, arguably beat him, even though he was on bottom for most of the fight, and then beat Jake Hatley with his grappling. I think he's going to do the same with Carlos Hernandez. Hernandez is pretty good. He's got a pretty good amateur record as well. Yeah, I'm still salty about how he robs poor Daniel Barrios, who's hustling on the regional scene right now, really trying to get back into the UFC. Like, he lost to a decision he should have won, and he's fought 3 times now since then, and he's going to be fighting again one more time. Tough for poor Daniel Barrios. But anyway, man, I've got Nascimento. I think he's going to get a submission or use his grappling to win a decision on this one here. We move on. Jimmy Flick taking on Charles Johnson. Now, if Charles Johnson wins this fight and then fights at UFC 284 against a guy that is struggling to find fights on the Australian regional scene, he will be my new favourite fighter. There's a guy called Steve Erceg who's struggling to find a fight. I think the UFC's thinking about picking him up for UFC 284. Charles Johnson wins this fight and has a quick turnaround and do a UFC 284. Fight Steven Erceg, my new favourite fighter. I like how he's been active. He beat Zhalgas Jamagulov in a pretty controversial decision. Honestly, in my opinion, I don't think the robbery is like as bad as people think it is. I think, I that's just how I feel. I don't think the decision is that bad. Like, it's definitely not as bad as other decisions. Had a competitive fight with Mikhaev as well. Like, he's a good fighter. Jimmy Flick as well was coming out of retirement after about 2 years away. He's a really good grappler, really good submissions. He submitted Cody Durden with the flying triangle, which is insane. Submitted a 6-0 opponent on Dana White's Contender Series. He's a great grappler, but I think Charles Johnson is just a much better striker in this matchup here. He's the guy that won the Muay Thai tournament to get into Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand. And he's just also got pretty good grappling and jiu-jitsu himself. I think he's going to beat Jimmy Flick on the feet here. And if he wants to turn around at UFC 284, fight Steven Erceg, Charles Johnson. Yeah, Charles Johnson. I like Charles Johnson. He's a cool guy. I've had a very brief conversation with him on Instagram. But next fight is Dan Ige versus Damon Jackson. And Damon Jackson, he's a guy which I've been looking to fade for a while, but I keep picking him to win anyway. I'm pretty sure I picked him to beat Pat Sabatini. I picked him to beat Dan Aguirre because it's a short notice fight. I picked him to beat Camilo Kirk when no one really did. And I don't know about this one. I think I might have picked him to beat Charles Rosa. But Dan Ige, man, like, this guy's just on such a bad run, and no one's mentioning how bad the run that Dan Ige is on right now, man. Like, he's fighting great fighters, but man, he robbed Edson Barboza. That was the worst decision of 2020. You know what I mean? This guy has won. He's 1-5 in his last 6. You know what I mean? And like, he lost to Korean Zombie. And then he lost a very close fight to Josh Emmett. And then he fought Moff. Like, I do respect Dan Ige for taking on these tough fights, but man, I do think that Damon Jackson gets it done. But I've got to fade Damon Jackson at some point. But I think I'm just gonna keep fading Dan Ige. I've never picked Dan Ige to win a fight on my YouTube channel, and I've 2-0 in picks, I believe, since I started. So let's just keep doing that. I think I'm undefeated on Damon Jackson picks and undefeated on Dan Ige picks. So I'll pick Damon Jackson to win. I think he's going to get done by decision. He's a good grappler. I think Ige is the better striker in this one here. If Ige is going to win a fight that's like very close to the top 15, it's probably this one or Edson Barboza, even though Edson Barboza dominated him. But is what it is, man. Yeah, I'm going with Damon Jackson at the moment. This next one here, I don't really know why this is the co-main event. I think Dan Ige versus Damon Jackson would be a much better co-main event. Or even Matthias Rebecki on the main card, Uman Nurmagomedov, Hayani Barcelos on the co-main. But it is what it is. Punali Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. I've got to go with Soriano in this one here. I think he's going to get the KO. Kopylov is a good fighter, but the guy that he beat was Alessio Di Chirico, who was on a bit of a losing streak right there, and then before that he lost to Derive in a competitive fight, lost to Carl Robertson as well. I like Punahele Soriano on this one here. I don't know if he's going to get the KO. Like, I love Even Guru's nickname for Punahele Soriano. It's Pillow Hands Punahele, even though he gets heaps of KOs. It's just a great nickname. Pillow Hands Punahele, I love it. But I don't think he's going to knock out Roman Kopylov. He just knocked out Danchalung Wimbula. I think he should be able to knock out Kopylov, so give me Soriano by KO in this one here. Now, we finally got to the main event, and obviously I'm not feeling 100%, and what a main event. I've got a lot to say, unfortunately, but I can't trust either of these guys to have 5-round cardio. You know, everyone goes on about Calvin Gastelum's cardio, this and that, but he just doesn't show up to fights in shape anymore. Like, he just doesn't. You know, he needs to put the buffet down and fight at 170. You know, I'm in the worst shape of my life, and I can repeatedly say I probably have a better build right now than Calvin Gastelum. Like, this guy needs to put the buffet down, fight at 170. You can do it, mate. You can do it, alright? You're a professional athlete, okay? There's no excuses at this point. I'm just some guy that makes videos in my bedroom. But yeah, he had that close fight with Adesanya, but Adesanya ended up winning in the end. And he fought Darren Till to a close fight, which he should have won. And then he got subbed by Hernandez, and he's just, like, recently, I know he's taking these fights on short notice, but he's just not showing up in shape. You know what I mean? Like, he's just not. And then Nasruddin Imavov's cardio is sketchy, man. Like, he gassed out in the third against Joachim Buckley. He beat Shabazian, but he was slowing down. Same sort of thing with Inheinch. I think he actually finished Inheinch pretty early on, but I don't think Imavov's got 5-round cardio, which is why a lot of people are probably thinking about Gastelum. But you got to consider this about Gastelum, man. This guy, he's a welterweight that just loves the buffet too much, so he fights at 185, and that's just the truth. That's just what it is. Like, we've been calling him for a fight at 170 for so long, but man, that boy must love his food. But yeah, I like Imavov in the matchup because he's so much bigger than Gastelum. I think he's gonna bank the first 3 rounds. I think just completely gas, but Gastelum is also gonna be gas. I think the first 2 rounds are gonna be good. The third's going to be a little sloppy, and the fourth and fifth are going to be terrible. So I've got Imavov decision. I think he's going to gas after the third round, and I think Gastelum's probably going to gas as well because I just don't trust him to show up in shape anymore. So let me know what you think about these predictions here. 12 fights on the card, a pretty good amount. I'm always happy when there's more than 10 fights on the card. You know what I mean? And it's going to be great. You build up into UFC 283, which isn't really the best pay-per-view. But I'm looking forward to it anyway. So let me know what you think in the comments.